Welcome back to the Pause and Effect podcast. I'm Dr. Kara, your host, and in the previous episode, we braved the scorching heat to discuss the serious topic of heat stroke in dogs. Today, I'm excited to have Dr. Nic Stirk back on the show, but this time we're shifting our focus to another crucial aspect of pet care, nutrition. Dr. Stirk and I share a common passion for ensuring pets receive the best nutrition possible throughout their lives. Join me in welcoming Dr. Nic Stirk as we dive into the fascinating world of pet nutrition. Welcome back, Dr. Nic Stirk from Watercress Vets. Last time we had a very different situation to this one today.
Yeah, we did indeed.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much for
It's
having me
cooler.
again. Yes, it is much cooler actually. Yeah.
So I want to remind our listeners, the last time I had time with you, we were in a very hot car.
45 degrees, yeah.
And that podcast episode has just exceeded 20,000 views in a very short period of time. It's had a great response, so thank you very much for sweating it out with me and
thank you.
taking us through heat stroke.
Yeah.
One of the things we have in common is an interest in nutrition.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show you that we can do these under more civilized conditions. So welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me again. Yeah, super.
Yeah, so I think what I'd like to do is take pet owners through the general landscape of nutrition and try and hopefully by the end of the podcast for them to have sort of an understanding of how to approach or how we approach nutrition. Obviously, we can tap into some various aspects of it, but I think let's start firstly with how frequently do you talk about nutrition within your consults? Because I know we're limited for time. It's definitely been flagged up as one of the things we should be discussing. But do you get an opportunity? Do you make the time?
So, as far as I'm concerned, the ideal time is obviously during any sort of consult if you can identify, for example, a specific condition that nutrition could be an aid in or help manage. But generally, the best time is the first visit that a dog or a little puppy or a kitten gets to your practice. Developmental stages are of the utmost importance. It's the same for kids, human kids. You feed them well when they're growing up and they develop better. The same for our little puppies and kittens. So I will always discuss nutrition with regards to puppies and kittens when they come in. And yes, at some point during the conversation of a normal annual health check, we'll then discuss, are you happy with the food that you're on? What are you feeding? And if there's some sort of specific condition that, yes, that nutrition could play a role in, then we dive deeper into that and then give the owners the options that are available with regards to that.
No, that's great advice. And I totally agree. I mean, I think, when we're setting out nutrition, we can say the puppies and kittens, and then generally there's nutrition for adult maintenance. And then we start to see nutrition for senior pets in the old age.
Yep.
And then we obviously have need states that are met, like you say, nutritional need states that there are foods available for that can help. So obviously, puppies and kittens, let's start there because they're different and they have different requirements. Can you give us your sort of insight into how you explain to owners that they can't be feeding puppy food to a kitten or kitten food to a puppy? If they've got both, they need to be selecting diets that are different.
So during university, we were always taught, even with medicine as well as nutrition, a cat is not a small dog. So they are physiologically very different from each other, even though they are still in the mammal group. Dogs are considered to be omnivorous. Cats are considered to be obligate carnivores, which means that they have to have protein, animal protein in their diets. They can't rely solely on plant-based proteins, which dogs can to a certain extent, even though animal protein is better. So in that regard, you will often find as well that people will come in and say, oh, but my dog loves the cat food, but the cat doesn't really like the dog food. Cat food has also got a higher percentage of fat in it, as well as protein, which does make it more tasty. So that's why dogs will generally, if they have the opportunity to choose between dog and cat food, they will go for the cat food because of its palatability. In that sense, if dog was to continuously eat that, they will become overweight because the energy content and the nutrient content is actually too much for a dog. On the complete converse for cats, the protein content of dog food, for example, and the fat content is not sufficient for them. So they will actually be nutrient deprived if you feed them a dog food. So that's why the cat food and the dog foods have been specifically formulated for each specific species. So starting off right at the beginning, like I said, I will always discuss the options of puppy and kitten food. So cats are generally fine with regards, you don't really have different size stages for them. You still have the kitten stage, life stage, adult life stage, and senior life stage. Same for the dogs. But cats are pretty stock standard. The important thing comes in with dogs, because it is very important to feed them the appropriate size that they are. So there is a little bit of a confusion sometimes that comes in when we say large breed puppy, medium to small breed puppy, and then small breed. It's not the size your puppy is right now, it's their anticipated adult weight. So anything sort of like up to 10 kilograms is considered to be a small breed. Between 10 to 25 is classified as being a medium. 25 and plus is large breed, and you can even then get some companies that will cater for what they classify as giant breeds. So that's sort of like 40 kgs and over. So the important thing when it comes to that selection, particularly with the medium and large breed dogs, these companies, particularly for the commercial foods, have been doing this for decades. There's infinite almost number of studies that prove that the correct nutrient balance for the correct life stage is of utmost importance. So large breed puppies, the principles of that food, it generally boils down to the calcium and the phosphorus ratios that they have in the food. If it's too high, the dogs grow too quickly, and then you can start getting joint problems, muscle problems, etc., etc. So the idea behind a large breed puppy diet is that it ultimately, in a sense, slows down their growth, which just allows everything to grow in relation to everything else. So the muscles grow at the same rate as the bones, the cartilage, the tendons, the ligaments. So it doesn't stunt your dog's growth. They will still reach their genetic potential or their adult weight. It just takes them a little bit longer to get there, but everything grows in relation to everything else. Whereas if you then do get an energy high diet, it's not specifically, it's kind of like you can feed a Chihuahua and my Great Dane the same diet. It doesn't really work that way. So it might not be detrimental to a little Chihuahua, but for a Great Dane, if there's too high energy content in that, they grow too quickly. That's when you start getting the joint deformities, leg deviations and the likes of that. So that is a very, very important aspect of, particularly when people bring in their medium to large breed dogs, that I will always have that conversation with them with the puppies, that they do need to go onto, if they are able to, go onto one of the premium or the super premium brands, even if it is just for that developmental stage, just to get everything settled and well. And you can prevent a heck of a lot more problems later on in life if they just develop correctly.
Setting them up for life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you say, that period is so critical.
Yeah.
And I think one of the misconceptions that I've found in talking nutrition is this perception that it's all about the kibble size. So it's wonderful that you took the time to explain that it's actually the formulation of the diet. It's not just about, obviously, we want our pets to experience a good, pleasurable meal at every meal that you provide them. You know, it's important to pet owners that they are seeing and witnessing that. We're all becoming, very attached, and we want to see that. So I understand the kibble size, and the dye is used to cut those shapes and sizes. And I want to go to cats after this, but they are very different in terms of formulations.
100%.
Yeah. So let's talk cats, because not only are cats less keen on dog food, but they are fussy. They're really fussy. And are you able to offer some explanation, obviously, in terms of shape and texture and size? And
so the studies, obviously, when the first commercial foods came out, they were all stock standard, the same little kibble that everybody kind of knows now. The dogs have tended to stay that. There are certain breeds that will get a specific kibble shape, which can be of some sort of benefit. But particularly with cats, the latest research is that they do actually prefer different kind of shaped kibbles. And there are commercial brands now that are bringing out different shaped kibbles within the same packaging. So you get little round ones, you get star-shaped ones that's shaped like little fish and the likes of that. They can also be different colors to potential. I'm not talking now, they mustn't be like red and green, because then
dyed.
you know that they've added artificial coloring to that. It might be a slightly shade darker brown, etc., but ultimately the formulation is going to be the same. But you will often find that makes it far more tactile and more appealing then to the cats to then do that. And cats as well, you also get those ones that will only eat wet food. You'll get the ones that will only eat kibble, and then you get those that will have a combination of both. So also an aspect of feeding a commercial diet, particularly the dry kibble, is it does have a benefit for dental health. So if your cat is eating wet food only, same as dogs, they're not getting that abrasion that's going to be helping just to scrape that bit of plaque off, and keep that biofilm off those teeth to prevent it from coming to tartar. So their teeth and their mouths are exactly the same as ours ultimately. You get that biofilm, you get the plaque, which then becomes tartar. We keep it under control because we brush our teeth minimum twice a day. I don't know of many clients that would be prepared to do that.
Imagining trying to brush the cat's teeth. You can barely get a stroke in.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there are specific diets that can be used specifically for that sort of thing. There are little dental chews that are available that can also help with that sort of thing. You just have to be careful with those as well, because if you're giving too many of them, they will often have a very high fat content as well, because they want to make them palatable, which is going to be detrimental at the end of the day with regards to their weight.
Yeah.
So if you do have a cat that only eats dry food, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You might find that they could be then drinking a little bit more water compared to a cat that's only eating wet food.
Yeah.
So a lot of clients will come and say, my cat hardly drinks anything, but then they're on an exclusively wet food diet. So don't get alarmed by something like that, because they're actually getting a lot of moisture then from the food itself. So, or then if you say that my one cat's drinking more water than my other cat, you need to also bear in mind that it could be the type of food that they're eating. So wet food, more moisture content; dry food, they will then drink more water to compensate for that. But certainly also feeding positions for cats. Cats can be very picky about that. Some will eat their meal in the morning. Some will want to graze the whole day through.
Hey there, fellow pet lovers. Today I am thrilled to share with you a new treat on the market. Plant Dog, the innovative plant-based treat that's been a welcome addition to my pet's routine. As you can imagine, as a veterinarian, I'm particularly fussy about what I feed my dogs. Finding a treat that ticks all of the boxes was a real game changer for me. What I love about Plant Dog is the versatility it offers. Picture this, I'm treating my 4 dogs, each with a unique tastes and preferences. With Plant Dog's snappable design, I can effortlessly divide the treats into equal sections, ensuring each of them gets their fair share of crunchy, tasty goodness. And quickly, or the salivation starts. And let me tell you, their reaction is priceless. As soon as I call them from the gate these days, they come bounding over like it's the highlight of their day, which, let's be honest, it probably is. Plant Dog never fails to capture their attention and affection. Available in 3 flavors of bacon, burger, and barbecue chicken. But it's not just about the taste, it's about the quality too. Plant Dog's commitment to using organic, wholesome ingredients gives me peace of mind of knowing that I'm providing my pets with treats that are nutritious as well as they're delicious. With added omegas, antioxidants, and a complete absence of artificial additives and preservatives, it's a win-win for both pets and pet parents alike. The treat's outer is made from organic rosehip berry, picked in the mountains of Lesotho by over 10,000 women during a short 6-month picking period, with added organic flaxseed, organic rosemary, and organic yeast. And let's not forget about the packaging. It is beautifully packaged and conveniently allows me to grab a treat on the go without sacrificing freshness or flavor. So why not treat your dogs to the goodness of nature with Plant Dog? Trust me, they'll thank you for it. Stay tuned for more of my personal recommendations straight from one pet lover to another. Before we continue, let's address a critical aspect of feline health, weight management. Allow me to introduce you to UltraPet's special diet, Metabolite Cat Weight Loss Food. It is available in 2 kg and 4 kg packs, specially crafted to support your cat's well-being and vitality. This recipe isn't just about reducing weight, it's about promoting healthy weight and management. With 34% protein, 11% fat, and 4% fiber, it helps control lean muscle mass while maintaining a healthy weight, ensuring optimal nutrient absorption. Featuring a tantalizing chicken and rice flavor, Ultra Pet ensures that even the picky eaters will enjoy their meals. The vacuum-coated kibbles deliver a taste experience that your cats will love. What sets this weight loss food apart is its formulation made with fresh meat, providing a healthier source of protein. Plus, the added addition of taurine supports good eyesight development and a healthy cardiac activity. With omega-6 and 3 fatty acids, this food promotes a shiny coat and a healthy skin. Additionally, the inclusion of VitaCat ensures essential vitamins and minerals for healthy development and immune system protection. The prebiotics in this formula create an environment for microflora to flourish, further supporting your cat's digestive health. Ultra Pet's special diet Metabolite is an ideal choice for overweight cats. Just ask Freya, my Bengal, who has thrived on this diet. Give it a try and see the difference for yourself. Your cats will thank you, and you'll appreciate Ultra Pet's commitment to feline health. Now, back to our episode. So, obviously, historically, it was a case of you feed the dog twice a day. I try and move people away from the once a day, because I imagine what it would be like to go without food for 24 hours.
Intermittent fasting.
It's not my scene. But we used to be able to put food down for the cats, and they would manage their own weight. I've seen a trend to having to now manage portions. And my perception of it is that the foods are becoming more and more palatable. I mean, we all want our animals to enjoy the food.
Yeah.
Are you finding the same? Are you finding that cats can't be left to ad lib feed, that they actually need to have better portion regulation?
Control, yeah. So again, because they do have a higher fat and a higher protein content, it's very easy for them to pick up weight. So yes, if your cat is disciplined, should I say rather, that you can let them graze throughout the day, and they're staying lean and they're doing their business, they're going outdoors and being a cat, then that's fine. But it's the indoor cats that are the more sedentary type that are quite happy to just sit on the windowsill and watch the world go by. And eat.
It's boredom.
Perfect life. I mean, what more could you ask
back
for?
as a cat.
So in those instances, then yes, moderating or more controlled eating. Because also then cats will then come and start walking between your feet and meowing, and it's like, oh, shame my kitty, and then you give them another scoop of food and another scoop of food. So they're not stupid. It is then our responsibility as pet owners to ensure that we're not actually overfeeding our pets. Because as with the human population, overfeeding and overweight and obese patients, we see them literally every day. So that's another aspect where a specific, what we could term like a prescription food, a more specialized diet would then come into play as well with regards to nutritional management. Let's
go into that when we talk about that, because I'd like to tap into your feelings about that. But, so we're talking, let's go back to post being puppies or kittens.
Yes.
You now have an adult dog, and you're going to be managing the portions twice a day.
Yes.
How do pet owners determine how much to feed their animals?
Okay. So also just getting back to, if we're talking portion size and frequency of feeding, getting back to the puppies and the kittens, I sometimes even say for really, really young pups, to almost, if you are able to, even 3 or 4 times a day. So on the bags of food, if it's a reputable brand, they will actually specifically say your pet is, say, 1 to 4 months. They give a weight scale of what your pet is at that particular time, and then how much grammage of food per day is necessary. So it can get a little bit confusing, because majority of the well-known brands will put it out in very, very basic terms like that. So that if you've got a 10 kg dog, I'm just talking off the top of my head here now, a 10 kg dog, they're 4 months old, they need 150 grams a day. So then you would then give them 75 in the morning, 75 in the evening, if it's an adult dog, for example. For a puppy, you would then split it up into 3 or 4. 3 or 4, I think, is better when they start getting a little bit older, like 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, and you can maybe just throttle it down to 3. And then after that, keep it at twice a day. Because I agree, once a day feeding is...
I just find they scavenge a bit more. Or get hold of the avos. Or I'm going to do that anyway.
Avo season's also a ballooning stage of the season. So,
So we're saying, look at the back of the packaging and take the daily recommendation. And obviously, depending on age. If
Yes.
they're very young, they need frequent meals to manage their blood sugar.
Yeah.
And if they are adults, divide that into 2
Yeah.
and feed it sort of portion.
Because, I mean, also understandably, if you have a little Jack Russell puppy, I mean, their stomachs are going to be so tiny. And the number of times we've had little puppies coming in and they look like they've got this massively distended stomach. Oh, no, we've just fed them now. So, like, if your little pup's tummy becomes barrel, it's being fed too much at that particular meal. So that's why it is better to give them smaller meals than throughout the day as opposed to, just two meals as an adult dog.
And then if we're talking about the back of the packaging, which I think in future it'd be nice to do a podcast episode just where we talk about, and there's so much information to gain. But what are the other things that you would advise pet owners to look at when they're glancing at the back of the packaging? Obviously, maybe we start with you're faced with a whole shelf of food and there are multiple brands, and how do we firstly start with which food to buy? Because it can be like sweets in a sweet shop.
Absolutely. You want to take them all, but you can't, sort of thing. So I think first and foremost, I think the reputation of the company that manufactures the products, most of them have been around, like I said, right in the beginning for decades. They've done all the research, they've done all the heavy lifting and all the investigations and the likes of that, and they've managed to then formulate these diets specifically for the dog's needs. So there's a lot of smaller companies now, for example, that are coming in that are basically extrapolating from the premium brands and making their own sort of diet, not necessarily the same quality. Because, I mean, even if we're just talking protein, not all protein is created equal, for example. And that could be a whole other chat as well. So your nutrition is such a huge topic base. So then you're getting to the information on the back. Label reading is a very, very important aspect of deciding which is the most appropriate food. And that, again, is another complete podcast all in itself. So it is important to read the ingredients, because the same ingredient, usually how it works with the label reading, the ingredient that has got the highest concentration is always listed first, and then it kind of goes down in increments from that. So that's why the vitamins and the minerals will always be down at the bottom, because you have such small quantities of that. When it comes to the fat, the carbohydrates, and the protein, those will obviously make up the biggest majority of that food. So if, for example, you're getting this brand and you have 4 or 5 almost like carbohydrates, so like the maize, and these companies can be very sneaky as well with how they name them. So the same product or the same nutrient component can have a number of different names, which are all acceptable, but then they start splitting that one component into its other names, which then actually drops it further down, but it's all the same stuff. So if you actually added all of those carbohydrate concentrations together, it would be the first ingredient, and that's not ideal. So label reading in itself is a whole other topic, and that's the thing as well. So reading the packaging, going on the company's integrity as well when it comes to the making of the food. So one of the companies, particularly if they don't have the raw ingredients that are needed from their preferred suppliers, for example, they just won't then manufacture that food, unfortunately. But that's how strict they are with their quality and their ingredients. If they can't find an equal product to go in, they wait for the producer to be able to produce it again, because then they would have done all of the quality control testing and the likes of that. And these companies, the big corporates, yes, I mean the stringent testing, the lab testing, all the rest of that each batch has to go through. It just shows that yes, there is the quality control that's there, as opposed to the cheaper brands which might not go through such stringent quality control. So the reputation of the company is absolutely top of what you're going to go there. Also with the information on the back, depending as well if the company does a wet food version of the kibble, for example, as well. Just getting back to that, because usually they would give you then a grammage on how many grams of dry food to give then per day. Underneath that, you might find what looks like a little packet, but then a tin. And then that's then indicating, if you're wanting to feed wet food as well, how you then drop the number or the amount of grammage of the kibble that you would then incorporate onto that. So there is all of that information generally on the back of the bag that you just need to then read and make sure that you're getting the right combination, because if you're feeding the correct grammage, but only for kibble, but then you're still adding stuff in.
Well, it was going to bring me to interrupt you and say, how do you broach the subject? And I've being delicate in my questioning here, because obviously I know the majority of pet owners are really, they're doing the best they can for their pets, and they don't know any different. And so this is probably, again, a bit like our podcast in a hot car. This is an awareness opportunity, but that they give treats, and I'm the same. In order to get my dogs from the gate, when there's someone at the gate, I call them and reward them. How do you manage the treat giving? Do you advise that they look at the calorie content of that? Do you ask them to use the kibble? So what is your approach to the overweight before you're advising a prescription range, which we'll go into? But
so funny enough, one of the easier things, well, having said that it's often not easy, is tackling the treats. Dogs and cats love getting treats. The humans love giving the treats. So I'm not saying don't, but you have to be a little bit more responsible about how frequently, how much, and of what you are giving. So dogs and cats are also not small people, so their metabolisms are also incredibly different to ours. The example I use, if you're using a relatively big little treat biscuit, for example, dogs are not really, a majority of dogs, particularly if you give them a treat, it'll just be dug down the hatch and they just sit there waiting and they're wanting the next one sort of thing. So they're not really cognitive of the size necessarily of the treat. So for example, if you're giving 2 full biscuits, rather do 1, break it in half, you're still doing 2 hand movements, which the dog is then receptive to. I'm still getting my 2 treats, but you've already then literally cut the treats down by half. So if you're giving 4, use 2, break it in. Right. So they're still getting 4 little biscuits. 4 hand movements is what they ultimately used to. And that's the way that you can start then just curbing the amount that you're then giving. High-fat foods, so like if you're wanting to feed liver as treats, dry horse, biltong, those are generally the ones that, or the chicken skin, lamb chop fat, all of that sort of stuff that you might not necessarily want to eat, but the dogs will lavish it, is also then not ideal. So certainly monitoring or just manipulating the system ever so slightly. You can still feel good for giving a treat. They'll still be good for getting a treat, but you've literally cut down the portion size by half. Using other alternatives, and you'll be amazed, actually, particularly with dogs, as what they will accept as a treat. It doesn't always have to be a biscuit or a piece of biltong. That's exactly it. I've been amazed. Like this one client came in, and we had spoken about it before, and she says, you will not believe how her dog loves blueberries. So blueberries, slices of apple without the pips. So slices of apple. Our dogs at home, we caught them tucking into a cauliflower and a broccoli head. So, they'll eat it. If they anticipate that it's almost like it is a treat, they will more than likely to try it. So, nice little game, just experiment. Some will like carrot. It's also like that crunch that they get from it. So
quite
carrot,
sugary, hey?
Carrots, apples, blueberries. If they want to eat cucumber, cabbage, broccoli. So you can. So
what are the no-nos?
Them.
Let's take the opportunity.
Oh gosh, that's also another whole
podcast. I know,
but
just some of the things that you found that your clients are, that treat thing. Because obviously grapes first thing came to mind was grapes and raisins. People don't think grapes and raisins, same thing.
Especially into Easter. So going into Easter as well, we're getting all the chocolate. So chocolate is also can be problematic. So the darker the chocolate, the worse it is. So if you're going for your Lindt 90% cocoa, that is far worse than if they get like white chocolate, for example, because that's majority just sugar. So it's not a good idea to test the limits of your dog by trying to see which is going to be worse, is don't feed them chocolate, because it also has a very high sugar content as well, and the fat. So it can pose problems with regards to their weight if it is an ongoing thing.
Yeah, and pancreatitis.
100%. Yeah. So that's what I was going to say with the like with the bacon rinds and the lamb chops and the likes of that, cheese. So anything fatty, if your dog is not accustomed to having a sudden intake of a very, very highly fatty treat or meal, the pancreas is probably one of the most cantankerous, obnoxious organs you're ever going to come across, and it does not take much to irritate it.
Yeah.
And pancreatitis can be this almost like a subclinical. So you can just see your dog's just not right. They might be stretching out, so they kind of stretch their little front legs out and their little bum goes up into the air. We call that the prayer position. And they just seem uncomfortable, but you can't really just pinpoint what's going on.
And some of them even eat through that, don't they?
100%, yeah. So that's why I say subclinical, but they're just off color. To the complete opposite, where it actually becomes a life-threatening condition. So there are tests that we can run generally in-house with a blood test to see what the levels of the pancreatic enzymes are doing, for example. And if that is then elevated, then we take the appropriate steps to that. So, obviously, if the dog gets into your shopping basket and takes a block of cheese, there's nothing you can...
Vomiting and diarrhea.
Yeah, you can expect that in worst case scenario, then it can induce in the pancreatitis as well. So with Easter coming, chocolate, hot cross buns with raisins in it. And you also get the fancy chocolate flavored hot cross buns coming through now as well. Certain nuts, so like macadamia nuts, the fatty foods.
Onions. Garlic.
So onions, yes, a lot of people, if they're
gravies,
going into feeding then a non-commercial diet, if they're cooking their own food at home, for example, they think that spicing it up with garlic and onion is a nice thing to make it more palatable and tasty, as we would appreciate. It's not a good thing, purely because your onions and garlic are ultimately from the same plant family, and they can affect the blood system negatively. So, you're not doing your dogs any favors by putting onion and garlic into their diet, because it can actually be detrimental,
really,
and particularly cats as well. They are very, very sensitive to the oxidative change in their red blood cells, particularly with the likes of garlic and onions and stuff like that. So people back in the day would have used garlic in the food to prevent fleas infestation. I don't know if there was really any scientific proof behind that, if it was just an old wives' tale. But we try and we try and not encourage that sort of thing now. There's far better treatments for that. So then getting to Christmas time then as well will also be like there's the gammons and the turkey skins and so all of those need to you try and avoid that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I suppose it takes me to the next little subject I'd like us to talk about, and you made mention of it before, saying that there is a huge amount of research, palatability, digestibility studies that these formulated diets go through, as well as strict hygiene and protocols in order to be able to test these diets are consistent and adequate and safe. Home cooked diets, again, I understand the need. I think owners are wanting their pets to have a good, pleasurable experience when they're eating, and they're trying to do good. But I'd like us to take the opportunity just to provide some insight into why this may be a bad idea before we even go down the raw food diet route. So let's say the home cooked meals. Okay. Can you give us some thoughts on that?
So sure. When I was growing up, my mom used to cook our dog's food as well, and it used to smell delicious because of all the garlic and the onion that was being used. We thought it was our supper being prepared, but no, the dogs got better smelling food sometimes than what we did. So the problem with that, unless you've done a nutritional course, degree, diploma, whatever, to get the correct nutrient content for your particular dog, it can basically boil down to guesswork, which is not ideal. So that's again where these companies, that is their speciality, is getting the correct nutrient compositions for small, medium, and large breed dogs and puppies and seniors, for example. So it can be very difficult to get the correct nutrient formulation for a home-cooked meal, for example. particularly with puppies, and I go back to the whole large breed thing. If you can't guarantee that you're getting that mineral content and that energy content correct, you're probably asking for trouble later on, well, even during that developmental stage. If you're not getting that nutrition spot on, you probably are going to get problems coming through later on.
Yeah, I think people maybe don't appreciate that we've got our animals for a relatively short period of time. So everything's slightly sort of compressed into those, hopefully 10 to 15, maybe longer years. And so we're going to potentially see problems associated with. And deficiencies are not always, you talk about subclinical disease, are not always obvious. You know, obviously toxicities can become really obvious, and we see our patients coming in with, whether it's chocolate toxicity or similar. But with nutritional deficiencies, that can just be they're just not doing as well. Or you see it present as a different disease process, and they are, I've seen them, have been on home-cooked diets with great intention. So I think, how do we speak to owners if they're wanting to do that? Would you encourage at least partially some of the food be a commercial balanced food, so that they feel that they are presenting appealing food to their pets? Is that a step that they can take to just try and mitigate some of the risk, or is this just a big no-no?
I mean, I think certainly if you're getting a base of good quality nutrition, then that's fine. And I often do hear it during consults that, you get the client that is like, oh, but I just feel so bad. They're just eating this dry kibble all day, every day. And I get that because obviously us as humans, we've got such a varied diet, and there's so much variety out there. So an excellent opportunity for something like that would be to use a smaller portion of a commercial diet, for example, and then almost topping it off with the cooked food, almost like as a little bit of a little zhuzhing it up, so to make it a little bit more palatable, for example.
If they really want to.
Yeah, but at least you know that the base core of the food is nutritionally balanced, and then you spicing it up a little bit for them to, that you also then feel better than that you're getting that little bit of, generally the wet food will be more palatable. And if you have to do that, if your dog is of ideal body condition score, for example, then I really don't have a problem with what you're ultimately feeding them, as long as it is nice quality. And if it is going to be a home cooked meal, maybe just give a little bit of a supplementation of a commercial diet,
or a treat on the weekend, or
100%.
Or one of the meals be a little bit of zhuzhing, like you say.
So they don't necessarily expect it then every single time, and it is then a nice little literally a treat for them, because you will also then get, if you're using the commercial diets, again, that crunching of the kibble can to an extent help with keeping those teeth a little bit cleaner, and then the dental chews, and just spicing it up a little bit with a little bit of wet food is fine.
So can I brave the conversation? And I only say that because I get a lot of pushback from people, because it's becoming a scarily popular decision for some people to feed raw food diets. I have had comments, I'm giving you some context here so that you understand where I'm coming from. I've had comments like, oh, well, if you're being funded by, universities are funded by multi-million-dollar rand pet food companies, they certainly didn't pay for my degree.
No.
So obviously as the ultra pet vet, I'm now being funded. For me, I would never work or make recommendations that don't align with my integrity. Honestly, if I felt raw food diets were the way to go, I'd be selling raw food diets within my practice. I refuse to do so. What's your feeling on the subject? Because it's a delicate, really delicate subject, and I probably should have a slightly gentler approach, a bit like the home-cooked foods. But I feel so strongly about it because I also have a chemistry degree, and having done that background, have a very good understanding of pathogens. So they make me worried for the pets.
Absolutely.
More than just the balance issue. So what is your thoughts?
I think the raw food diet or the concept of it, I mean, it's been around for a while. I mean, the articles that I've read in the past, I mean, one of the first ones was in 2001. and that was in the States. So that was the whole the BARF diet came up, and that was the word that was getting bantered around, and it has slowly but surely kind of like filtered through into South Africa now, where we are getting more and more clients that are coming through saying that they want to feed raw.
What's the need?
So it all goes back to the initial idea that was put forward for a raw food diet, was that because dogs are descendants from wolves, they need to be fed the same as wolves. And I'm probably going to get some heat about this, but a Yorkie couldn't be furtherly removed from its ancestor of a wolf. So yes, there will be certain breeds that are more wolf-like, if you want to look at it that way. But believe you me, if you let a little Yorkie go in the prairie, it's not going to survive very long. So no, like that hunting instinct and all the rest of that. So yes, I think a base for nutrition on what in the historical
But I mean, these wolves were not living very long,
no.
were they? They were not reaching, I don't know how many people saw like old wolves walking around. I mean, they would...
Yeah,
they have a very short lifespan
100%.
Relative to...
also because of the dental issues and possible nutritional issues as well. So, yes, it was this craze that then has come through to us. They do say that it helps particularly with the skin conditions, etc., etc. The reason it might help with that, because we do sell the fatty acid skin supplementations at our practice, for example. So if a dog does have a dry skin... Yes, it has been proven that the right formulation of omega-6 and 3 fatty acids, and you have the zincs and the other micronutrients that are in there, will certainly help with the conditioning of the skin. And that's kind of where they've been punting the raw food diet in. For the problems, skin in particular? Skin more so than anything else. Possibly a little bit of digestive upsets as well. So yes, you do get dogs that will have that hypersensitivity to... So chicken, beef, lamb and pork are the four main ones that can potentially cause issues. So then a novel protein like an ostrich or a fish or something like that could be of benefit. The bottom line is that I don't think there's really much control over the formulations of these raw food diets. So Auntie Joan down the road can manufacture her own and start selling it. And Uncle Pete down the road can also start doing it. So in that respect, there's no quality control. Can they verify where they're getting the raw ingredients from? What is the nutritional profile? Are they sending it off to a lab to get a nutritional profile for that particular diet? Are they using pork, for example? If you don't cook pork and wherever they're sourcing it from hasn't been using parasite control, for example, tapeworm is a real thing that you can then ultimately be feeding your dogs or cats, worms. Bacterial infections, or contamination, should I say, rather. Also, you don't know how long it's been sitting in the freezer. Or the food chain. I mean, has it been kept refrigerated? Has it been prepared in a sanitary way? So there's all of these questions. And these are things you can't see. No. Like microorganisms are not visible to the eye. No. And so, and I think maybe there's some sensitivity, like I say, with my background in chemistry, is that the awareness is there. I cut chicken on a chopping board. I don't lick my fingers. Would I feed it to my dog? No. Would I feed cooked chicken? Yes. Would I feed raw? No. Why? Because I want to be able to have direct contact with my animal. So I think a lot of people go, but they don't show signs, to be honest. Like you can see, these vets are punting commercial foods because they're making millions from it. If you wanted to, you could supply a raw food diet in your practice, but we choose not to because there are risks associated with that we can mitigate by cooking food, worst case scenario. 100%. And I think, if you have children or elderly guests or family members, your dogs may be fine and be subclinically infected by something. They may not show signs. But it can be transmitted across to the kids or the family members. And I mean, kids are in close contact. I mean, I'm in close contact with my animals, but particularly kids. Yeah. So we also, I will tend to use that example as well. When you drop something, you say like a 3-second rule, get it off the floor and you can still eat it, sort of thing. I think Mythbusters actually did an episode on it where they proved that a dry object falling on the floor versus like a wet piece of ham or chicken or something, the more moisture content there is, the greater and significantly so, and it wasn't just on Mythbusters, it has been proved in other articles as well, like proper veterinary articles, that the more moisture there is in something, the higher the likelihood of bacterial contamination. And it's ideal, it's like a little petri dish just waiting for a bacterial explosion to happen. So if you've also then got the food down, I mean, so some dogs as well, they might have a little bit of a nibble in the morning and then not really want to eat until the afternoon or then the evening again. If you're at work, that food is sitting out, putrefying in the heat that we've been having lately as well. Ideal bacterial medium to grow on. And then, if you've got a little toddler that goes and puts their hands in it, and they will always put something in their mouth. Yeah. If there are bacteria on there, then now, because it's been sitting out there and your dog goes and eats it, if you aren't keeping that bowl clean.
The bowl in particular. We spoke about the bowls in the heat and the stainless steel getting hot, but if you've got a bowl and it's used again for the next meal.
And again without cleaning, I mean, you just... that revolting slime.
Let's say, owners are aware, they feel that they've bought the raw food from a company that has undergone some palatability and digestibility studies, it's gone through, let's say, and they are very aware of the bowls and they clean up after them. And for me, I think the idea that we can give the same taste and pleasure in feeding if it's cooked.
Yeah.
So I think that would be just my minimum requirement.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that people feel that strongly about it, that they must be buying commercial pet food, although there is great, like you say, scientific studies behind those foods, longer term.
Yeah.
But at least cook the food.
Yeah. And that's what I say, because some clients also, it becomes an affordability thing. So when it comes to the commercial food, you ultimately get what you pay for. And I think that's across so many different aspects of our profession as well. You get what you pay for. So you are paying for a premium brand, you are getting the quality that is associated with that brand, as opposed to the cheaper brands that are out there. Going for a home-cooked meal, like I say, if you're wanting to do that, as you've also suggested, if you want to go the natural route, then just cook it. It takes, because it will then, particularly if they're using pork, for example, like I've mentioned, heat treating pork and cooking it for long enough will then deactivate any potential tapeworms, for example, that might be in there. Bacteria as well, depending on what they are, will be very, very resistant sensitive to heat. So then cooking that as well. However, the toxins that these bacteria can produce, which ultimately cause the issues, can often be very heat stable. So then again, you've now bought this raw food that could have already been contaminated, and cooking it then might not even then be sufficient to deactivate those toxins. And that's where there is a bit of a gray area with regards to a natural food and then even cooking. But generally cooking, because when you go through the commercial diet production, it is heat treated, it is cooked when it goes through the extruders and the likes of that.
Even the canned and the pouches, and they undergo a heat
process.
And
then there will be random samples selected from each batch that will have to go to the lab for bacteriology, toxins and the likes of that, screening. So that's why I say that there isn't, I don't know of any regulation with regards to raw foods at the moment. So anybody and everybody could potentially just do it, get their nice little label stuck on and sell it at the pet food shops or the supermarkets, whatever. And there's no real accountability for it. Whereas the commercial foods, they can literally trace down to the animal where that product had come from. Which farm they sourced their protein from, the carbohydrates, the fats, for example. They are able to trace back everything, and in so doing have an investigation if issues come up. Where I don't think you've got that food security with regards to particularly raw food. If you want to do the natural route, like you say, just cook it. Yeah.
So I don't want to miss the opportunity, because I know that my favorite subject, so I could be here all day. But I don't want to miss the opportunity within this podcast to just talk. Let's talk, because there are multiple diets that are formulated for particular need states. But let's just briefly go through the skin diets. Let's go through that. Maybe the joint diets, and then the weight diet. So let's start with the skin diets. You made mention before, obviously, of the novel protein and potentially the carbohydrate.
Yeah.
So what is it within that food that helps our pets that have got really problem skin?
So if you then go, they will generally be classified as being a prescription range, which you wouldn't then be able to get from a vet shop or a pet shop or a supermarket, for example, because there are very specific applications for it that we as vets have been trained to identify and utilize in nutrition as a form of treatment then as well. So with the foods, particularly for skin, they will have then a higher concentration of the omega-6 and 3 fatty acids. So ultimately, if you're going for a prescription or a premium brand, you wouldn't have to add anything else. And that's another thing that there is a bit of a misconception. Do I not need to add anything? Maybe for some of the not so great brands, possibly, depending on the nutritional profile. But if you're going for a quality brand,
it's complete.
That is complete.
Balanced.
You don't have to add anything else. So the skin diets will then potentially tend to stay away from the proteins that have been identified, because it can either be the carbohydrate or the protein that causes the skin issues if they do have a food allergy, for example. So they try and stay away from the chicken, beef, lamb, and pork. So that's where the novel protein comes in. So generally then, like, they'll use fish, so either salmon, herring,
duck, venison,
those sort of things. Also then from, so then ostrich, for example, and then venison, like you've mentioned, they might use green peas as a carbohydrate or a potato. So onion, potato is one of them, barley, sorghum, as opposed to wheat and rice. So in that, the principles behind that is that it's a protein source that your dog should theoretically not have been exposed to before, in which case then your immune system doesn't react to it as a problem. Some diets are even so advanced that they've broken down the protein to such a small size that the immune system, even if it is, for example, chicken, beef, lamb, or pork, that protein source has been broken down to such a small size with enzyme action and hydrolysis that the immune system then still can't recognize it as a foreign protein and ignores it. But those ones, obviously, because the processing of those diets is an incredibly expensive process, those are like your optimal, and those will be the very expensive foods.
I think the critical thing to mention here is that if you are going to start your animal on those diets, you've made mention of before, you don't want to be, you're investing in this diet, you don't want to then be dropping chicken on the floor.
No, that's the thing.
or having kids feed it. This has to be an exclusively fed
so that's the thing. When
regime.
if you're coming to an exclusion diet, which can be incredibly frustrating for the client and for us, because it is recommended that minimum 12 to 16 weeks before you start noticing a difference. So I have these clients that also then come in and say that they've tried everything. Okay, but how long were you trying it for? No, we had 1 bag of this, then we had 2 bags of this. We went through half a bag of that. It's consistency and a process. And like you said, it is tricky when it comes to if you've got toddlers in the house, because you know that they're going to just be throwing, and the dogs they know their place. Any feeding time, the dogs are going to be under the little stand where the kids are, and they're going to be feeding. So it is, if you're going to be spending the money on a premium diet to do a food elimination trial, for example, it has to be that or nothing. Because literally, if you drop that piece of chicken or a crust of bread or something, and you've made it to 12 and a half weeks, you theoretically have to start from the beginning again, because then it might then cause a flare-up.
So the joint diets, take us through the joint diets.
So again, there's a specific ratio of the omega-6 and 3 fatty acids. They are shown to be anti-inflammatory. And then you do have generally the glucosamine and the chondroitin sulfate that will be added into the food or part of the ingredients, which then help with the joint support. Anything with joints, though, as well, weight management is of the utmost importance. It's the same with people. If you've injured yourself, it's rest, generally anti-inflammatories, and if you are carrying a little bit too much, then you need to shift it, because all of that impact is on your joints.
So what do you advise? I mean, because my next one was going to be the weight formulations. So I want to share an experience, obviously, when I was seeing practice as like before going and pursuing veterinary, vet used to stand in the practice and say, if you're feeding this biscuit, and that's all you fed, this dog is getting too much. And she'd dramatically break the biscuit in half and say, you need to feed this much.
Yeah.
My understanding, obviously, and it just sticks with me because it was theatre. The reality is you don't want them to be nutritionally void.
No.
So the big thing for me with these weight diets is that they still get balanced nutrition.
100%.
But they're satisfying meals that then sort of manage their satiety.
Yeah.
So in terms of joint diets, what is it that's special about joint diets, and why, which patients, especially, obviously we've got the weight diets as well, we can talk about with the joint diets, but why is it that joint diets are really useful, particularly for our aging patients?
So it'll again boil down to the ingredients that are on there. So there's a specific ratio of the omega-6 and 3 fatty acid, which has been clinically proven to be anti-inflammatory. The ingredients, chondroitin and glucosamine, they being added in for cartilage integrity, for example. So even though it is a very, very focused diet, your dog is not being deprived of any nutrients. So in that respect, yes, joint diets and even weight diets can actually come hand in hand with each other, because if there is a weight problem, there are then specific weight loss and joint diets that are combined nowadays where you get the benefit of both. But that's where you need to then speak to your vet about it, because if you have, for example, a ridgeback that's got joint pain but has got an ideal body condition score, you don't want them to lose any weight, because then they're going to be losing their lean muscle mass, which they need for the strength of the joints as well. So then they would then go on to, for example, a joint diet specifically. If they are potentially overweight and also they need the joint support, great. There are generally diets that are now prescription diets that are available that will address both of them, because weight loss and joint problems will literally be hand in hand. So if you're carrying extra weight, you're carrying extra impact on those joints, it's not going to be ideal. And the less medications you can possibly have to keep on adding in, where it can be simple enough just to get them to shift weight, that can be of the hugest benefit to them as well. And then you get then the weight loss diets, which will then potentially also have a benefit of even just losing weight, helping that the impact and the likes of that on the joints as well. So I think that's where it becomes tailor-made. And yes, again, you get what you pay for, and it is going to be pricey, particularly if you've got a 50 kg Labrador that's supposed to be 30 kgs, for example. But I say to the clients, so yes, on most of the bags for the weight loss food, there will be 2 dosage ranges, one then for weight loss and then one then for weight maintenance. And there's usually a huge increase in the weight maintenance dose. But then obviously you're going to be feeding more, so it could become a little bit more costly. So what I would then say, so there are then light diets or perfect weight, for example, those sort of things where there can be a little bit of a misconception. So if you're wanting to get your dog or your cat to lose weight, it is better to go onto a calorie restricted diet to get them to lose the weight. And then by all means, put them onto a weight maintenance, perfect weight, a light diet, something like that. But if they're overweight, it's unlikely you're going to see a huge response.
Unless there's some dramatic exercise. And like you say, most of them have got issues with mobility. Or we're dealing with the real life situations where people are busy. And, yes, if part of our consultations are always, if you have the ability to increase their energy expenditure, take them out for a walk, or I've had podcasts before, I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, throw the ball, but then we're told we mustn't throw the ball too much because of joint issues. But if you can get the cats to work a little harder for their food, whether it's positioning their bowls and points where they have to kind of work to get there, it can make a real difference. So veterinary advice, taken through the whole experience, and we work with our clients to monitor that weight regularly and then advise accordingly. Because it's not just a case of you use your Labrador, for example, and you feed them for the weight you want them to be, and say you want them to be 30 kgs, but if you've been feeding them for 50, that jump is, that will be like a starvation. And then you've got problems where you may start seeing issues with fatty livers or dramatic scavenging. Or
the scavenging would then be a problem.
Absolutely miserable dogs. So it's really great advice saying work with your vet.
Yeah. But then also just very briefly on that body condition scoring. So everyone is aware that not all Yorkies are the same size. Not all Labradors are the same size. Not all German Shepherds are the same size. So you can't say because your dog is a German Shepherd, it has to be 30 kilograms. Because it's a Yorkie, whether it's a teacup or a standard, it has to be 5 kgs. That's where the body condition score comes in. And it's so easy to do, and your vet will be able to show you how to do it. And it is such a simple way of monitoring. So yes, a kilogram, the number is an excellent way of monitoring the process of weight loss, for example. But you can't expect every Yorkie to be 5 kgs.
It's like saying to every woman must weigh 55 kilos.
No,
we're all different.
Yeah, there's such variety and variation even within a particular breed that's why you have to use another monitoring tool to check that and make sure that it is being, so if the dog isn't losing weight,
there may be a reason.
Is there another underlying condition, thyroid, for example, which can be tested generally in most without having to send blood off. I know at our practice and your practice as well, you can test in-house. Yeah. It's a simple blood test to check what that is. But weight loss diets, you have to. Consistency, don't buy into the little puppy dog asking for treats, because there will also generally for the weight loss diets be other formulations of a treat or a wet food which you can use as a treat, but you have to manipulate it then so that you're not going over the quota that they're necessary or needed for. So most of the diets, life stages, puppy, adult, senior, will be feed your pet to the weight that they are. Generally with the weight loss diets, you need to feed your pet to the weight that you want them to be. And again, it must be a realistic. There's nothing more demoralizing. It's like, you go and take your dog in for another weigh, and it's like, we still haven't reached our weight, the goal weight, but you've been dealing with a 50 kg and you're trying to get them down to 30. It's a process. Time. It's going to take time. So what I would say, anywhere between sort of 5 and 10% at any one time. So lose between 2.5 to 5 kgs in your 50 kg dog. Then you set a new goal. So you do it little bite size until you can. If those diets are used correctly and there's no sneaky little treats, and I hate to say it, it's usually the husbands that are the problem in the households. Coming from a man, it is usually the husbands, and you'll see them sitting in the consult room and they'll be like, and the wife is giving them the hairy eyeball. Yeah, exactly. Please, can you phone my husband and tell him the same thing, because it's usually them that will be
they didn't want the dog in the first place, and now
giving them all the little treats and stuff. So it does become, it's not only the person who feeds the dog, it becomes a whole family involvement, because ultimately the dog isn't controlling what they're getting fed. They're just eating it.
And they can't get into that, well, some maybe, but they generally can't feed themselves. They require you to portion
100%,
control
So it is
things.
our responsibility, so our advice to you as a client, and you have to utilize that diet correctly. Otherwise, it probably isn't going to work as well as you would like it to. But those diets have also been formulated so that the weight isn't just going to drop off, because rapid weight loss is equally as bad as having too much weight. So most of the weight loss diets will be formulated to do a nice gradual, and that's why I say
slowly,
realistic little goals to get to where you need to be. So
I know we've run out of time, and there's so many things that I still want to chat about. So we'll resume part 2 at some point. I'm going to have you back.
Awesome.
Hopefully a nice, lovely, cool day like we've got today. I think if people want to reach out with specific questions, how to transition pets from one diet to another, how to get your pets onto a new diet, particularly if it's a prescription diet, because it's a different taste. There are lots of things we can still cover, and a lot of conversation to be had around nutrition.
Because cats can be a little bit finicky with changing of foods as well. So
people, if they want to reach out, we can answer 100%. Specific questions.
Absolutely, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, and so hopefully we've covered a broader landscape of pet nutrition, and it's hopefully going to inform pet owners who want to gain some more insight. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's been great to have a chat.
Super. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dr. Stirk. As we conclude this enriching conversation with Dr. Nic Stirk, we've explored a wide array of topics surrounding pet nutrition, from life stages and dietary differences between cats and dogs to debunking myths and managing specific health conditions through diet. Dr. Nic's insights have shed light on the importance of nutrition in pet care. Remember, your pet's diet plays a crucial role in their overall health and well-being. If you've missed our previous episode on heat stroke or want to revisit any of our discussions, be sure to check out our previous episodes on the Pause and Effect podcast. I'm Dr. Cara, your host, thanking Dr. Nic Stirk for his invaluable expertise. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and leave me a review. Together, let's continue our mission of informing, inspiring, and opening up conversations for pet owners everywhere. Until next time, stay informed and compassionate, and don't forget to give your pets a hug from me. Welcome back to Just for Pets. You're with Dr. Cara.
Hello, Doctor. It's Chanel the Persian. And, I can't seem to stop retching to get this hairball up.
Are you on a special diet?
Excuse me?
Hairball control food will really help. And maybe some Laxapet. And lucky for you, Just for Pets have a big range.
Well, how early can I get some?
Order today, and we'll deliver pronto.
Wow! I feel better already.
Justforpets.co.za. Vet approved, pet adored. Get it all to your door.
We have an exciting announcement to make. We are looking for guest speakers who are passionate about the pet industry and sponsors to support future episodes. Are you an expert in pet training, nutrition, or behavior? Maybe you're a veterinarian with insights to share, a pet store owner with unique experiences, or a pet product inventor. We want to hear from you. The Pause and Effect podcast is a platform for industry professionals like you to showcase your knowledge, experiences, and stories. As a guest speaker on our podcast, you'll have the opportunity to share valuable information, engage with our audience, and have your voice heard in the pet community. Whether you want to discuss training techniques, emerging pet care trends, or the importance of mental stimulation for pets, we want to feature you and your expertise. So, if you're passionate about pets and have something to say, we invite you to join us on an upcoming episode of the Pause and Effect podcast. But wait, that's not all. The Pause and Effect podcast is also seeking sponsors to support our mission of educating and entertaining pet lovers worldwide. By becoming a sponsor, you'll gain exposure to our engaged audience and have your brand associated with the love and care that we have for our four-legged friends. If you own a pet-related business, offer pet products or services, or simply want to align your brand with our pet-loving community, we'd love to partner with you. As a sponsor, your brand will be featured prominently in our episodes and our social media channels. It is a great opportunity to showcase your offerings to a dedicated audience of pet enthusiasts. So whether you're an expert in the pet industry looking to share your knowledge, or a business seeking to reach a pet-loving audience, we want to hear from you. To apply as a guest or to inquire about becoming a sponsor of the Pause and Effect podcast, please contact me at drcara@pauseandeffect.co.za. Get in touch and let's discuss the various opportunities. Thank you for joining us today. We can't wait to welcome our future guest speakers and sponsors to the Pause and Effect podcast. Remember, every episode is an opportunity to celebrate our four-legged friends.